Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Happy Friday, Phil. Thank God it's Friday. That's all I got to say. It's been a very challenging week down here. I don't know if everybody out there in listening will is aware, but on Tuesday we had an earthquake here that actually got me out of my truck because it was significant enough, and we shook around and had no idea what was going on. And I guess it was a 5.4 maybe, but it was very close off the coast. And then the following day, we got a hurricane. So yesterday, we had Hurricane Lorena came through here. We didn't get too much in the way of wind or anything, but we have gotten a boatload of rain. So that was, living in the desert, a boatload of rain is interesting. So we saw videos of cows floating down streams and people stuck in arroyos with their cars floating away and all sorts of things. So it's been an interesting week. And my computer died, so I'm testing out some new technology right now. Hopefully, you guys can hear and see me if you're watching on YouTube. But anyways, so that's my week here in Baja.
Mike, Disney's got a boy problem. Disney Studios is seeking an original intellectual property to win back Gen Z men amid Marvel and Lucasfilm ticket struggles. But the problem runs deeper than missing ticket sales. For decades, fathers, uncles, and older brothers didn't just pass down characters like Spider-Man, Luke Skywalker, and Iron Man. They shared the origin stories that gave those heroes meaning. The issue is what's on the screen now. Mike, if the modern storylines no longer carry the same values as the classics, is Disney alienating the very audience it's trying to win back? And can a new intellectual property fix that?
Are you asking me if Disney or the entertainment industry can fix the human being in America?
To put it in a nutshell, I'm basically saying they lost boys, and they're trying to do some scientific shit by getting a new intellectual property.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. I think we've lost the people altogether. I don't think it's I'm not sure it's the entertainment industry that's the problem. I think it's the generation is the problem.
So are you saying that no matter what kind of new Marvel comic book or whatever comes out, this generation's just not with that? They're not into this?
I don't think they're with that. I think fundamentally that we have society has shifted in such a way that I'm going to say that, like, so what you're talking about, like old school, like let's go back to like when we were growing up, right? So we had like Spider-Man, and you had DC Comics, and you had what do you call it? The other guys,
Marvel, DC.
Marvel, and then you had them, competing, and you had all these superheroes, and like you said, there were origin stories. How did Spider-Man become Spider-Man? Well, he got bitten by a spider and got superpowers that was, whatever, injected with radiation or whatever that story was with that. And Superman obviously was basically an alien, came from another planet. And Iron Man was more of I liked Iron Man because I felt like he was a little bit more real, because it was he made him into himself kind of that way. And anyways, so there was origin stories behind all of these things. But remember, we're talking about a time where we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have all this stuff going on. So we could be more immersed, I think, in the fantasy of the storyline. And now I think that our society has shifted into a situation where, first of all, we like 15-minute snippets, right? We go on TikTok, and God forbid the thing you're watching is any longer than 15 or 20 seconds. So I think our whole, I'm old school, right? So I still read books. I don't know that generationally, these younger generations that Disney is looking at trying to win back, I don't know that they're doing that. I think they're playing video games, and their storyline is coming through. Like I've been watching on television. I've been watching that TV show that was based on a video game. And I'm drawing a total space blank here. What it was, or what the name of it is, but the long and short, it's an apocalyptic storyline, but it's following the video game. And see, from when I first started watching The Last of Us, and when I first started watching the show, it almost confused me. Now, this is probably dating myself, but it almost confused me that a movie series is following a storyline in a game, because see, that's counterintuitive to me. For me, the definition of a game is something where we don't know what the outcome's going to be, right? That we're going to try to win. I'm going to play you, and one of us is going to win the game. But games nowadays, the modern games, have storylines that they follow, right? So this is what I'm trying to say. So I think that like Disney trying to win them back with old school, style of storyline is never going to work, right? I mean, maybe they could come out with another, maybe Disney should develop video games, because that's the storyline. Come up with new characters in a game.
So
does this make any sense? I mean,
it makes a lot of sense. And in general, I agree with your premise, but I don't think that they've just totally moved on from the idea of comic book characters brought to screen. They are not enjoying how they're being presented to them.
Yes. And that's more of a social statement, though.
Right. So, for one thing, okay, women never really watched these type of shows.
No.
So, this was for boys, just like the Barbie movie was for girls.
Correct.
And they literally said they were looking to get rid of those watchers for women. Mm-hmm. And you can't make women like movies that they don't like. So that's the problem. Yep. And the content necessary to keep the boys watching it is not there. Mm-hmm. So that's where I differ. I believe if they went back to old school toxic masculinity, men would be going to the movies. There's been not.
Well, Phil, you bring up a good point here, and I think this is maybe one of the problems with our current culture. Not everybody wants to see the same thing, and I think that's what's happened is that they've morphed into a production scenario where they're trying to put out, say, a movie and appease everybody. And like you said, that's just not natural. I don't necessarily want to go see Barbie, and I have plenty of women friends that they're not really interested in what Iron Man's doing.
Right.
So But
here's the thing. There has to be no compromise when it comes to artistry and writing. So with what you just said, keep Barbie written just how it should be for women, and keep Iron Man just how it should be for men. And you know what happens? I end up going on a date with my wife to watch Barbie. So you still get the tickets, and I end up taking my wife to go see Iron Man.
I mean, I watched Barbie because Margot Robbie was in it.
But you getting my premise? If you actually entertain me or her, one of us is going to drag the other in.
Exactly.
But when it's a compromise, neither one of us is really interested.
Yeah, nobody's interested in it. That's right. So nobody's interested in that.
And that's the whole ideology, it seems, of this modern generation is compromise before everything.
I mean, look, Disney's had its head up its ass for 10 years now, at least.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, Kamala Harris was set to keep Secret Service protection through next summer after President Biden quietly extended it beyond the normal 6-month window. Mm-hmm. President Trump, he just revoked that protection as Harris prepares for a 15-stop international book tour promoting her memoir, 107 Days. The policy says former vice presidents get 6 months. Ex-presidents get lifetime coverage. Biden made an exception. Trump ended it. So the question is, does he have the right to do this, and is he wrong for doing it?
Well, can I first say, where have we ended up where I can lose an election and write a book about it? I mean, and then go on tour. Holy hell. I mean, we all just lived through it. I don't know that we needed a book to know what's going on, right? I mean, we just went through this. Anyways.
But Mike, when you think about it, I am kind of curious as
what she has to say.
How can you write anything upbeat about those 107 days? I'm interested in the spin in that book.
Yeah, we might have to do a book review here on the podcast for that, actually, because, well, in all fairness, I would agree. So first of all, it's a book written on 107 days, like you just said, and so it's a very short period of time. Nothing went right. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, as an outsider looking at it, like that's 107 days of sheer terror and misery, right? So I guess from that standpoint, this is an exciting book because I would love to hear what the person that actually had to experience that 107 days and lose was like, because and whether her take on it is based on reality and what we're seeing, because that would be, wow, that's a downer. How does it end?
I'm more pessimistic than that, Mike. I am not interested in hearing what she has to say in the book about any of those things. I'm interested in seeing if her ghostwriter aligns with her thoughts, because I can't imagine that she wrote it. And if
Phil, if she wrote it,
it should be 107 word salads.
Oh my God! Can you imagine? You start at the first paragraph, and by the time you got to the end, you'd be back at the first paragraph. Like that would be sheer terror. 100% word salad. She should have called the book Word Salad. That would have been a better title. Anyways, as far as the security detail is concerned, here's my general thought on that.
I forgot I asked you that question.
I know. I almost forgot too. I mean, every vice president has been given 6 months. She went through that. I just think that's the way it is. Now, Biden extended that. I don't know what the reasons behind that were. Quite possibly, I could give the justification because not only was she the vice president, she also was the candidate to become or to run on their party for the presidency. So that obviously increased her liability, let's just say. I was actually, I'm gonna surprise you on this one, maybe, Phil. I don't think he should have revoked that, and the reason I say that is because I was actually a little surprised that the vice president only gets 6 months. I would have personally, I would have guessed the vice president gets lifetime like the president, to be honest with you. So that kind of surprised me, and regardless of what you're hearing, I know the naysayers on this are saying, well, if she was just laying low and not going on a book tour, we wouldn't need to keep paying for this, the tax dollars or whatever. But the reality is like, I mean, what politician do you know that got out of office that didn't write a book and go on a book tour? I mean, every one of them did. So I think that's just a common occurrence, so I wouldn't blame it on the book tour itself. So, I don't know. I in the scheme of things, the cost involved with protecting her, even for life, is fairly inconsequential.
Correct. So, Mike, we're on the same page with this. We may be looked at as Trump supporters. So here's proof that we're not. Because My
No,
answer
no.
to the question is, yeah, he's got the right. That's what the paper says. That's what the rule is. That's what the law is. Yeah, he has the right. But amongst
Oh, he has the right. Yes.
but amongst men, an action like that, whether it's in corporate America, whether it's as the president or in the playground, that was a punk move.
Yeah. I mean, let's be
Yes.
clear. That's 100% vindictive.
I, I'm. I can't think of a nice term for what he did. I believe in getting your lick back. I believe in payback and stuff like that. But I also believe in there is a man and there is a woman, and you treat women a certain way no matter what. So I can't get beyond that fact.
Well, Phil, not only that,
But when you look at it politically, Mike, it's still just there's no way to look at it and come up with that's a good move. It's just a punk move all the way around.
it's a punk move. And by the way, he won.
Right.
He doesn't need to be vindictive against her. He won. He won the election.
You know what it would have been in the player move and had more impact? He'd have been like, I understand that my win has ruffled some feathers, so I've extended her security for 2 years.
Yep.
That would have been the player move.
Particularly in our current culture going on in the States right now with so many violent acts being committed or targeted against politicians, judges, everything else. Yeah, I agree. That was, to me, no bueno. That's a no bueno move.
Exactly, Mike. You hit right where I was headed. I've been giving you these shootings and mass shootings and all of these things, and I've been giving you a kind of a theme of where things are going now. We have the perfect recipe for a vice president to end up getting assassinated right now,
which we don't want. But it's not in anybody's best interest, right? I mean, that's not a good thing.
Here's the thing with me, Mike. I think that the vice president should just automatically get lifetime, just like the president. Because let's think about this just logically. I think that the vice president is more in danger than the president, because a lot of people will be like, I can't even go for that. That's shooting too high. But I can get to her. Mm-hmm. She might literally get shot for something that the president did. They both should get lifetime security.
I think at the point that we're at today, I think that's probably a true statement of governors and judges. And, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast before, CEOs of companies. Security in our modern world is a fact of life. If Taylor Swift's next album comes out and it's a dog, and suddenly she becomes, quote, less of an artist or less popular, do you think that she's going to get rid of her security? Hell no. I mean, just no, because it's a life. Unfortunately, once you're famous, that's a lifetime commitment. That's a forever thing. This is just the way it is. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, Harris is famous for life. It's just a fact.
Right. There'll be somebody 40 years from now, and this is their only 1 in a million chance of ever seeing her, and they'll take their shot.
Yep.
Big news out of the Caribbean. President Trump confirmed that the U.S. military sank a boat carrying drugs after it left Venezuela. The first strike of its kind since he ordered more forces to the region. This raises questions about legality, security, and what it means for Americans traveling in Central and South America. Mike, what's the real significance of this strike? Does labeling cartels as terrorists give the U.S. more legal room for these kinds of actions? And could it affect ordinary Americans traveling in the region?
Oh, geez, I got to unpack that. That's a lot of questions all in one. First off, this might be a theme of mine today, unintentionally, but I'm going to tell you, I don't really agree with that move either. First of all, let's look at this on the surface. We took the United States military, which is the most powerful military in the world, and probably launched, I don't know, a $500,000 to $1 million rocket at what amounts to a little fishing ponga boat. I mean, like that wasn't. First of all, when I hear it on the news, the first thing I think we just attacked a ship coming out of Venezuela. Okay, there's nobody on planet Earth who's going to describe this thing as a ship, right? I mean, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We attacked a small boat that wouldn't have survived a 4-foot swell that had 11 human beings on it. And I'm going to agree with, I don't know who said it, I don't remember. There was a Democratic senator, I believe, that said, the last time I checked, smuggling drugs and doing, you know, what they're doing with those things was illegal, but it wasn't an act of war, and you know, it's hard to justify killing people over. First of all, to say that boat was going to America was kind of a load of shit too. There was not a chance on the planet that thing makes it across the Caribbean. I mean, give me a break. None of this. I don't buy any of this. So to answer your other questions, do I think it was a good idea? No, I do not. I think declaring that the cartels are terrorist organizations is probably somewhat appropriate and somewhat accurate. However, actually taking military action against them, particularly if it involves, and I've said this before in the podcast, if it involves somebody else's sovereign territory, I definitely don't agree with it. They did it in international waters. But look, you open yourself up to a potential here of, God forbid, they're going to, you know, next thing you know, John and you know, Pablo are out in their boat, and you take it out by accident, and you're like, oops, you know how that works. Oops, we thought that was Tren de Agua. No, it wasn't. It was they were out there catching tuna. So to me, the entire reason that they did that was optics. Pure optics. All they're doing was all they were trying to. And by the way, not optics for you and I.
Right.
Those are optics. They were just trying to show Maduro's regime in Venezuela, and particularly the cartels, that we mean business. Do I think the cartels bought it? No. No.
Well, you already took the words out of my mouth, Mike. The optics, and the optics to me are, I'm just going to get to it. My issue with this whole thing is the issue that I have had with the strategies that the U.S. government has used since the 80s in fighting drugs. The big guys always survive all of this stuff. I would have been more impressed if you had told me that you took one of these expensive bombs or drone strikes and actually killed the top guys.
Yeah.
And you can't tell me that they don't know exactly by within inches where these guys are. It's not like they don't know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because these guys end up having meetings with the government officials of these places. You can't tell me they can't find them. But
yeah, they can.
You shoot these guys on the boat. And let's two things about the boat. I didn't see no 11 people on the boat. I don't even think the boat was big enough to have 11 people for me to miss them.
It sure didn't look like it.
And here's the saddest reality of the whole complete thing. The guy that's given the job in the drug business to get on a flimsy boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and supposed to be taking drugs all the way to America in it is a person to feel sorry for.
Exactly.
Not to blow them the fuck up.
Right. I totally agree with you. And by the way, unfortunately, those people, like you're describing, those, quote, 11 people on the boat, there's an endless supply of them. So we took out 11 of them. There's another 18 million of them. You know what I mean? Like, you accomplished nothing. You didn't take out anybody that was important.
These people are so poor, Mike, that some of them are probably even like, the next guy to take the job is probably like, man, it's a possibility that I might get struck. But they're so poor, they're like, well, if I get paid up front, I can give this to my family. That's how poor they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought it was nuts.
Mike, my hometown, Mayor Brandon Johnson just signed what he's calling the Protecting Chicago Initiative. A sweeping executive order aimed at stopping federal agents, including possibly the National Guard, from storming into Chicago. He even gave special directives to the Chicago police on how to handle things if federal troops showed up. No mask, visible badges, body cameras on, and no cooperation with immigration enforcement. The mayor says it's about protecting residents' rights. But here's the real question. If he used the same fire, the same urgency he just showed with this executive order and applied it to crime, schools, and poverty in Chicago, would the city even be in this situation today?
I mean, here's the sad reality is that, I just saw some stat, and I don't quote me on the numbers, but over the Labor Day weekend that we just went through, I forget how many people were injured and shot and how many people were killed just in that one weekend by guns alone in Chicago, right? And yet, both the mayor and Pritzker, the governor, have said we don't want help. The governor had an interesting interview. I watched his whole interview, and I forget who he was being interviewed by. A woman, I think it was NBC, and he was saying when she asked him point blank, "Do you want to improve the city of Chicago?" And she said it right to his face. It appears that over the last 3 to 4 weeks in Washington, D.C., sending in federal troops and sending in people to help has had a extremely positive effect on Washington, D.C., where some of the numbers are amazingly improved. And he kept saying, well, you could send in more people that will, he kept referring to like paper pushing people. And she kept, re-diverting him and saying, look, I'm not talking about support, because he kept, oh, yeah, we would love support from the federal government. We would love more support, more money. Yes, we would love that. Well, no. She's like, how about troops on the ground? Couldn't answer that question. So they're willing to cut their arms off to avoid any kind of appearance that they are cooperating with the Trump administration. And that is a sad fact for, quite frankly, the people of Chicago and the residents. So for the mayor to sit there and say, we're protecting our citizens by non-cooperation with ICE, that's a load of shit, right?
See, that's my issue, Mike. I agree with everything you're saying, but my question to you is the amount of effort that he's putting into writing. Now we know that some people didn't even know mayors could write executive orders.
Right.
Now we know he can write executive orders. Now we know that he can literally gather all the police together and give them directives on how to do things and how to interact and how to dress and present themselves and give them a standard SOP and all of these type things.
Right.
And on top of that, he's also enforcing and coming up with a way to fight against troops coming in with their weapons to do what they want to do from the U.S. government. And my thing is, If you took a fraction of that effort and applied it every day through the streets of Chicago, there would not be no problems. You'd be the greatest mayor. You would be the standard bearer on how to be a mayor of a country. And my issue is not just with him. Every time I see a U.S. official, whether he's in the White House or he's a lowly alderman of a district, how are you spending any of your time any day of the week, even if it's just 1 minute, defending crime or illegal immigrants?
Well, and that's the thing is, I heard the mayor literally say, and this is his defense of Chicago, look, all cities have this issue and all cities have problems. Well, wait a minute here. First of all, you're supposed to be concerned with your city. And just because there's a shooting in Baltimore does not mean it's okay in Chicago. So, I mean, that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. So, and if I was the mayor and I was hearing that the government wanted to send in people to help me, as opposed to some other city, well, I'm going to take the help. So, look, this is not a judgment at all on whether or not I believe that Trump and his administration is within the rights of the law, because that's to be discussed at another time, I think. And whether or not he has the right to send National Guard troops in and all this other stuff, but the reality is it's hard to argue that putting boots on the ground is in some way going to negatively affect the citizens. That's an asinine argument. It just simply is not believable. And I think if you look at Washington D.C., you can prove that point. So I think they're on the wrong side of history. To use your expression, it's the 80-20 rule. They're battling the 20%. They're in the loser category.
Agreed. Mike, as President Trump's foreign policies stir up global tension, China is stepping into the spotlight. At the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, Xi Jinping urged 20 world leaders, including Russia, Iran, and India, to unite economically and politically, presenting China as a counterweight to U.S. influence. The big question: is Beijing truly offering stability, or is this just power politics under a different banner? Mike, when China's pushing for a multipolar world and deep economic ties amongst U.S. rivals, do you think this represents a real shift in global power dynamics, or just a temporary alliance built on frustration with Washington?
I don't even think that it's a temporary alliance. I think that it's a sham. I mean, and I know it's a strong statement, but look, you had all these countries come to attend this thing. You had China, like you just said. You had China. You had India. You had Iran. You had Russia. I mean, the long list of, I'm going to call it schoolyard bad boys. Everybody that was a schoolyard bad boy was in attendance to this, right? And for those that are not as familiar with some of the dynamics between this, the three biggest players there really were Russia, China, and India. Russia, China, and India don't like each other, okay? They really don't like each other. They never have. Okay. So to get them to cooperate on something is more of a cooperation by either default or because of necessity. And that only is going to last so long. And the reality is that I think the Chinese economy has been and continues to be having issues. So they're let's call them the main power there, right? So obviously the Chinese economy or the Chinese government in general is stronger than, say, Russia or India. However, over time, China is weakening. If you look at their birth rate right now as an example, it's one of the worst in the world. And it's so low that they're aging out, right? So what's happening in China is they're similar to what we experienced in the United States, where you have all these people that suddenly are on healthcare, and you've got to support your older people. Well, China is facing this. They had a huge boom of people that were young. The average age of China is increasing significantly. So now they've got to take care of all these, and which also, by the way, means they have less workforce. Their workforce is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So they have some economic issues for sure over the long run. So I see this meeting more of a FU in the face of Washington. I think there's a lot of optics involved in this too, similarly to what we talked about with some of the other issues. And I just don't think that I'm not too worried. That is not an alliance that's going to last.
Okay. Beijing put on one of the most visually striking military parades in recent memory. Columns of tanks rolling past Tiananmen Square, fighter jets trailing colored smoke, and even futuristic systems like hypersonic missiles and robotic displays. A true show of might that drew the eyes of the world. Mike, looking only at the visuals and the sheer spectacle of the event, how would you grade it compared to the recent parade in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I mean, there's no comparison. That's like saying, if the Chinese parade was the NFL, the one in Washington D.C. was like the junior high school, B squad. I mean, if you're rating it just optics of what it looked like, China wins that.
It's not even fair. The reason I even brought that question up, Mike, was, do you remember how hard it was to get some kind of support for Trump's idea of even having a parade?
Yeah, impossible.
And now some of those same people are coming back and saying, look at where China is now. Look at their parade. So now you all of a sudden understand the symbolism when it's on the other side, but you didn't understand it when it was on our side just because it was Trump's idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was only because it was Trump's idea. Mike, just a few weeks ago, Trump brought Putin to Alaska for a one-on-one summit. Days later, he hosted all the major European leaders at the White House, claiming the world was lining up behind U.S. leadership. But now, we've got China hosting as guest of honor Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un, Narendra Modi, and all these same leaders at a massive military parade, fresh off their own big international summit. So, Mike, do you think Trump's high-profile meetings with Putin and Europe's leaders were effective, or did China just pull the rug out from under him by stealing the spotlight?
I think they're equally ineffective. I think that what happened in Washington was also optics, and obviously you saw the result out of it. We've got nothing. And we got no closer to Ukraine and Russia solving any problem. That's kind of been dead in the water. They're trying to revive it again now, but it's not getting anywhere. And I think when you look at the three of them marching, when you had Putin and Xi and what's his name, Rocket Man, walking together, North Korea, this is a joke. I mean, you can't take any of that seriously. You can't take the. I mean, think about it. This is like out of a novel, where you got these banana republic dictators walking together, marching together. You got the Rocket Man comes in by train. Okay, give me a fucking break. This guy's a joke. The country is a piece of shit. North Korea is never going to go anywhere. They're not really a threat to anybody. They can't get out of their own way. They're all, he's destroying his own people. It's a load of crap. It's a total puppet government anyways, because in 10 minutes, Russia or China, for that matter, could probably take it over. And then you got Putin, who looked like a feeble little shaky creature next to the Chinese guy. And Putin has no control, barely has any control over his own territory, realistically. If China wanted to go in and take over all of eastern Russia, they could get away with it and probably win that. Because think about it. The peninsula in far eastern Russia, most of those people are ethnically Chinese, or more similar, more Asian than they are European for sure. And over history, China has long controlled some of those areas. So China is a much stronger country than Russia.
I agree
So when I put all those three guys marching along looking at the military parade, to me, that was China showing North Korea and Russia who's the boss. And as they said, this was a show for President Trump sitting in Washington, and they were hoping he was watching. And of course, Trump says, "Oh yeah, I'm watching your parade." So it's optics. It's a bunch of. It's to me, it was a nothing burger. I mean, we all know. I wouldn't have doubt if half of that stuff that China was parading was fake. You know, you had walking robotic dogs that probably couldn't start up. You had laser beam. They had some. I saw some big round things on the backs of trucks. So you had laser beam things. They probably, who knows if they worked or not. Look at North Korea. North Korea's been doing military parades forever, and they've long, been determined that half those missiles that they got are like made out of paper mache.
Wow.
So that's my thought on those guys.
Wow.
Yeah, see,
Mike,
you never know what Mike's going to say.
We are on polar opposites of this for sure.
Okay.
So I'll just walk it from where you just stopped. One of the things I was going to mention was there was a time where when you saw military parades like this outside of America, the immediate thought process was, half that stuff, if you unscrew it, it ain't even nothing inside of it. It's just it's all fake. We're past that, Mike, with China. You mentioned Korea. Matter of fact, they just had like a big destroyer that they were christening, and
it sunk.
Right. But this ain't Korea. This is China. China has been building stuff for everybody for a while now. So
I'll give you that there was more real stuff in the parade than fake stuff, and certainly much more powerful stuff than North Korea. Yeah, I'm not putting them on the same level.
But it still sounds like you are not putting them on the same level as America. And
I'm not. America would crush them. Absolutely fucking crush them.
I think that we are missing a lot. A lot on that, Mike. And the significance of them at the meetings and then being at the parade, I think you are discounting that way, way, way too much. And true enough, the main guys were Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, no doubt. But you need to look at the laundry list of countries from other continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe and stuff.
Yeah, most of them did not go to the parade, though. We're talking about two different things. They went to the conference. They did not go to the parade.
They didn't sit with the guests of honor.
I think a lot of them left.
Oh, I'm sure some of them left, but they still showed up to the main part where they conducted business. But what I'm getting to, Mike, is, and for our listeners, if you get the opportunity while you're listening to this, pull up a map of that region on that coast where China is, and you will see that almost every island that is surrounding China, there's like a barrier of islands surrounding China, and the majority of them are supposed to be allies of America, and not only allies, but they've allowed us to have military presence on their islands. And that has really been the only reason why China has been so nice with us up to this point, is because we pretty much got them hemmed up.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the list of people beyond the guest of honor, almost every one of those chain of islands, almost all of those allies were there. Mm-hmm. And I sent you the video. I was hoping that you watched the first 15 minutes. They was in line like the king, like they were coming to see the king, shaking his hand, bowing to him and everything. Xi Jinping basically this weekend, he unzipped his pants and gave everybody a look. And they were all bowing their heads, kissing it.
I'm not arguing that, but I think a lot of it is smoke and mirrors.
As far as the power of China's military, I want to, and these other ones, I want to give you some information, Mike. Do you know what a nuclear triad is? Mm-hmm. There's only 4 nuclear triad nations. And for our listening audience that doesn't know, those are countries that can land, air, and sea dispense a missile. And you can also send a missile intercontinental to another continent. There's only 4 countries that have that ability. 3 of them were at the summit and we're watching the parade. There's only 9 countries in the world that have nuclear weapons. 5 of the 9 were there. So in some ways, even let's say we say that America has the stronger might. If China can get 1 or 2 of these other countries that are a triad nuclear country to align with him, we're in trouble.
Yeah, they're not gonna though. And the reason they're not gonna is that everybody hates China.
Everybody, quite frankly, hates America more.
They hate. No, I disagree. And even worse, China hates everybody.
Bro, everybody hates everybody.
Not necessarily. No, hate's a strong word. China really hates everybody. They have always, their culture, their history, their leadership has always been one that is self-contained and looked at it as separate from everybody else.
Mike.
They don't cooperate well.
Mike, I'm going to say a really strong statement here. If we were to poll countries and we were to ask all the countries in the world, if you had zero fear of America and you could merely make the choice off of preference, would you still deal with America? And you excluded European countries,
mm-hmm.
It would be almost a landslide of we hate America. The only countries that are that actually in their heart like America are Anglo-Saxon countries. Once you get outside of that, don't nobody like America because they look at America, even though we are a melting pot, is looked at as white America. And most of these other countries do not like America. If they could, they only deal with us out of fear. And the whole idea of these meetings, the whole idea of them being at this parade and the display was to say, fear them no more. And I think you are really missing that.
I'm missing it. I think if you gave Vietnam as an example, a choice,
they would look at how many lives America killed, what they took them through in the 70s in the war, and how they've had to agree to occupying their country.
I think they would choose America over fucking China all day long.
Okay.
Those they have hated each other from the core. That's like talking about Israel
but there's a very visceral
and
thing
Hamas.
you're missing, and it's staying with the Vietnamese. In their heart, if they see a pale-skinned guy with big round eyes and they see a guy with yellow skin and slanted eyes, they are naturally more in line with them. That's what I said. If it's not a fear thing, they're gonna pick their own. Almost every country I've ever been to, I get a whole different conversation than you, Mike, because they feel like anybody that's not white in America is almost like a refugee in America, especially black people.
Mm-hmm.
And they spout their hate to be freely. I'm telling you, you don't have a pulse on this one. Outside of European countries, almost the whole rest of the world hates America. They say they like America.
I am going to strongly disagree with you on this.
And a high percentage of the immigrants who come to America don't like America, because people be like, they wouldn't want to come. They come here for the opportunity, but they hate you. I promise you that.
Okay, we're going to agree to disagree on this one. I don't see it at all like that.
Well, tell me why. I gave you reasons why I think that. Why do you think they would love you?
Oh, I'm not
Every
saying
one
that.
of them countries, you done occupied them.
Well, first of all, okay, Phil, there's a huge... Wait. Let's back up for a second. There's a huge difference between countries and people. So I'll give you an example. I went to Lebanon as an example. The Lebanese government does not like America. The people...
How do they like America?
People loved me. I had no problems whatsoever. I've never had, in the 120 countries that I've traveled to, I've never had people hate me.
Okay, and let me tell you what they see. They see money, and I can't show my hate. I'm telling you.
We're going to agree to disagree on this. I'm not backing down. And if you think for a second that China's got a play on this, no way. One button, we take them out. They are not powerful. That country, look, we learned.
I sure hope our leadership ain't thinking like this, because then we really fucked.
2 years ago, we had a bunch of people saying that Russia was a strong power. Russia is a fucking fourth world nation. They can't even run a truck 400 miles on a road without the tires going flat.
China.
I understand, but 2 years ago, people were saying Russia was a superpower. Russia's no stronger than Cuba. So they have... Russia right now has the most nuclear weapons in number. If you look at it not by much. I think they have 40 more than the United States supposedly. And I would say 90% of them wouldn't even take off.
Okay, I could say that about America then.
Nope.
If I was on a Russian podcast right now, I could say the same thing. You don't know that.
Could say it, but it wouldn't be true. You could go to you could go to an American military base where we store fucking trucks, and they've been putting new tires on 72-year-old Jeeps, and they drive. Like that's what we do in America. We are maintenance oriented. Whereas these superpowers are about show. China, Russia, these guys are just egomaniacs. And by the way, we have an egomaniac as a president too. So I don't know.
There is no leader that isn't an egomaniac.
Well, okay, yes and no.
You cannot aspire to that without that.
Possibly, but we have legit egomaniacs when you're talking about China, Russia, North Korea, and I'll throw United States into that. These guys are all nutcases. But I'm going to take that a step further. The Chinese, as a society, have a higher propensity for dislike of people outside of their culture
I agree.
than any of those other ones I just named, to be honest, or anybody else in the world. So that is a limiting factor, in my opinion, of China making long-term relationships with whoever, you name it, whether it's India or Vietnam or Malaysia or Iran, or it doesn't matter who. They are one of the reasons why China has been so successful of being an authoritarian regime for so long is that the people actually support it, because their culture is very different and wired differently, and in doing so, they have never liked America, they have never liked Russia, they have never liked India. They've never liked anybody that came to their little show this weekend.
I agree.
And they don't like the people that didn't come either.
And all those people that showed up know the same thing about China.
Absolutely.
I agree with you on that part, Mike.
I am more.
But there's a basic thing of I'm going to get the wording wrong, but you're going to know what I'm talking about. The enemy of my enemy, my friend, or something
is
like
my
that.
Friend. Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
And to most countries, America is the bigger enemy.
India's going to end up on our side, and that's why China loses, because India, of all of those countries that went to that, was the most powerful country at that summit.
I would agree with that. And
India's going to end up on our side.
So why do you think they're going to end up on our side, Mike?
Because they've had a very long relationship, fraught as it is, obviously with England and with the United Kingdom and with Europeans, and because of their culture is more aligned. They speak more aligned than China, and from an understanding level, there's more English spoken, a lot more English spoken. It's very heavily spoken, and that the communication factor is very important. You can't underrate the communication factor. So they're going to be way more able to communicate with us than they are with China over the long term.
I agree with that, but why is India able to communicate so well with us? Because we were the guys to fear, we were the guys in power, we were the guys to do business with. Mm-hmm. Yep. We are not looking like that anymore. It wasn't because they were like, we like Americans. It was like, we see an opportunity, let's blend in. We see safety in them.
I don't think that opportunity is going away. I think that opportunity is still going to be there, and I think they're still going to align with it.
But what I'm saying is, I don't believe like America's about to just disappear or something like that and not be a major player. But it's a lot. It's like it's hard to explain. You could be making a lot of money under somebody, but you spite them. You wish you could be making that money under somebody else because you don't like the way they manage you. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand.
See, what I think is the reason I don't think China in the long run is going to be successful is that most of those players that you're talking about that went to that summit, we'll call it, I think their days are numbered. I think I'll give you an example. Let's just use Russia for a second. I think Russia's days are numbered. I wouldn't foresee in 20 years Russia being a country any longer. I really don't. I think that once Putin dies, I think that it will split further into. I mean, Russia is a artificial country, meaning artificial borders. There's many countries that or ethnic cultures and stuff that make up that country. I think they are going to split into a bunch of countries, which obviously is going to weaken the shit out of them. They're already weak. So I think they're going to slowly fade away. I think North Korea, I think it's a matter of time that North Korea collapses too. I just do. I mean, they've held on a long time. I'll give them that credit. But I think eventually they collapse. And they're not really a big player in this anyways, because as we know.
I don't agree with the North Korea, and it's only because of location.
Kind of, but isolation, well, yes, but listen to what I just said. They will collapse when Russia collapses.
Okay.
Because you're right, North Korea very much is on location, but once they're connected to some other country that isn't Russia any longer, then I think that I think Russia to a large extent keeps North Korea afloat.
See, I'm with your thought process, except to the end. When Russia phases out, part of it will be because China has replaced them.
I do agree with that. And I suppose, yes, if indeed China took all of Russia's territory all the way around North Korea, then maybe North Korea would become a puppet thing of China. But I mean, regardless, I don't think that a lot of these players, with the exception of India, is an up and coming power. You saw a bunch of other countries, like you said, at that thing, but a lot of them were like, I mean, it's just a bunch of messes from Iran. I don't know who else was there. If I had to take a guess, if you weren't telling me who was there, I mean, I probably somebody from Cuba and Venezuela,
Cuba was there.
Iran, Angola. I mean, I can list all these. Yeah, I've been to a lot of these places. They're all about the fucking mess. So I mean, these countries are barely countries.
If you look on a map, a lot of those countries are still valuable. The only reason
for sure. Venezuela is a good example. Venezuela is extremely valuable.
Resources. I wasn't even thinking about resources as much as logistically for the army. The only reason why Taiwan is such a big deal is because where it is. It's not geography. A huge island.
No.
It's because
geography.
It allows us to have a military presence, and it helps with our strategy and everything. And all of those other places that you named have that same thing.
Yep.
That's the only reason why we care about those things. And what I'm saying is, they ain't ever showed up to nothing in America like that. Mike, I kind of even look at this. Let's look at this as like just parties, because we seem to be good at throwing parties, right? So we should both know about this, right? Like, if you live in a neighborhood that's like family oriented, maybe, and a couple of the guys who are fathers in that neighborhood are kind of like leaders in the neighborhood. Maybe one they run businesses in the city or whatever.
Yep.
And each of them likes to throw parties in the neighborhood. And Trump, all of the stuff he did a few weeks ago is like one of those guys threw a party.
Yep.
And everybody thought it was a big party. And then it was like how when we throw a party and there's other parties going on, but everybody's at our party. And that statement is a lot. He threw the big party that he threw the P. Diddy party. He threw the big party and everybody showed up. And the guy who thought he was cool and who threw a big party, he didn't get invited. The symbolism of that is huge. It's not even just huge amongst the power players. Sometimes those power players have to go back home and sway the country into a certain thought or belief. Well, if I just came back from this summit and you see Xi Jinping shaking my hand and I see more military might than I've ever seen before, I can come back and get the whole country, my parliament, my prime minister, all of that. I can sway them towards China. I see far more in the symbolism and the statements and everything that's going on. And on top of that, going back to Venezuela, I believe that we are not in Venezuela because of no damn drugs. If you, again, look on a map, Venezuela protrudes into the Atlantic Ocean. And if you look, at the way our country is protected, the only missing link is the Panama Canal, which we just shored up our agreement and we've put a presence there, and out there wide, out there in the open Atlantic Ocean. Venezuela is the perfect jumping off point. There's no excuse for us to be in those waters for no reason. But if we say it's some terrorism going on in Venezuela, it covers the idea of us having 5 subs and a bunch of ships in that area. We are ramping up to the possibility of war, us and China. And a lot of these moves that we're looking at, I see them as military moves. So it's that. Again, I mentioned the chain of islands that are around China. All of them showed up. And they are all allies of America, and they all have military bases on their islands. I could see some of them having the guts to say, get out of here with China's backing. And we're thousands and thousands of miles away from there. So if a country like Taiwan said, America, you got to go, there's not much we could do other than go or go full tilt boogie war. All of those chain of islands.
I agree with that. I think you're discounting the other thing you're forgetting about is China's. They're like pussies. China's they're like pussies. They're like look. Use Venezuela as an example. They're not helping Venezuela worth a damn. They talk a good game. Listen to what they say.
Care.
Well, that would be a great place for China to control over here in our hemisphere. But they're not willing. China does not put their force where their mouth is. They've had a very long history of that. So unless that changes, and it could, but right now, China does a lot of talking, no action. And that's not just been with America. That's with other countries. They even with Russia, who I would argue they're way stronger than Russia. But Russia, when it has come to a potential physical confrontation or even in a location, China has backed off and left. China's gone into Africa. They've gone into South America. They've helped build, roads and bridges and dams and stuff like that, and have made deals. You could argue that they've made some shitty deals, or they've made good deals, not shitty for the country they went in, to try to get control into those countries. They're good at that, of weaseling their way into countries. But then when it comes to suddenly Russia Africa's a good example of this. Russia sent in what's his name's before they killed him, forces in a couple of those countries.
Gaddafi.
No, the Russian guy that they killed.
Yeah. With the
when they sent in their military guys, China was in those same regions, and China kind of gracefully exited. So China's not really willing to do anything physical, and unless that changes, and that's why I call them pussies.
So I don't think it's pussy. I think that in the environment at that time, that was the best move, because at that time America was clearly the top dog. Clearly had control of a worldwide economy that could affect China. That ain't the case no more.
I think China has to be, we've talked about tariffs and whatnot. I think they have to be careful. I mean, obviously we have to be careful on our side in America, but I think China has to be very careful as well, that the sentiment does not become, if too many countries start agreeing with America or thinking that, not necessarily on the tariffs, but like saying, China has a little bit too much power here. They're making too much of our stuff. I'll give you an example. There's a big news down here in Mexico. Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, just is now imposing tariffs on China. And that has nothing to do with America. Mexico has come to the conclusion that they buy too much shit from China, and they don't like the power either. So you got to watch that carefully. If a lot of countries come to the same conclusion, ironically, similarly to what Donald Trump feels. That could weaken China.
The only thing about Mexico, though, bro, it's contiguous to us. So
it is.
It favors them to make decisions that maybe seem like they're not connected to America. And America may not have told them to do it, but it was in their best interest.
Well, I'll tell you one of the...
Matter of fact, you got more out of it by doing it on your own without us telling it.
Well, I'll tell you what okay, so let me go with what you just said. What you just said is somewhat true. The main reason why she's putting the tariffs in is because there is so much automobile manufacturing in Mexico, and a lot of the brands, not all of them, but they're American brands, and a lot of them are what I would call Japanese brands that are really American, meaning that like a lot of the final assembly is happening in the United States, even though it's Toyota and various other Chinese brands or Japanese brands. But the number one, I'll give you an example, electric cars in the number one country that China exports to is Mexico. And I see it all over the place here. I can't go to town here without seeing a whole mess of BYDs. That's all you see here is Chinese. So Mexico, it's not in their best interest to suddenly be importing a bunch of Chinese cars when they make all of these other cars here in the country. So that's what started this whole tariff thing. So yeah, you'd be surprised at how many Chinese cars are here. A lot.
Mike, you just brought up cars. That's a good way for us to end this. First, I want to ask you, what were the wow moments, if there were any, for you on this military parade thing? For me, and what made me think to ask you that was a fly ass car he was driving around in.
Oh yeah, you mean the Chinese limo thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It looks. Tell me if I'm wrong. Didn't it look like something that came out of James Bond?
Wow, that's exactly what I was gonna say, Mike. I was like, I love this, and I mean like old school James Bond.
Yeah, old school James Bond. It had there was parts of Aston Martin in the headlights and stuff. Yes. I was like, dude, I want one of those cars.
And I decided to look it up, Mike. And for our viewers, if you want to look it up, all you have to type in is China's Rolls Royce. And it'll pop up because I can't pronounce the name of the company. I think it's called Quan Li or Kong Li or something like that.
Yeah, that's funny.
They've been making them for a while, and that's an accurate description. It's like a Rolls Royce on steroids.
It was cool.
Mike, you got anything else you want to say?
Hell no. Same. I kind of feel like we covered it. We got all intense here today. It was a lot of fun, as always. Yeah, no. We'll see everybody next week, I think. I hope.
All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on the trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.